Welcome back. I'm glad you're here to learn more about piano. Today, we're learning our very first piece of sheet music. If you're a beginner following along with these lessons, I do want to hear how it's going and let me know by commenting below. To those who are joining us for the first time, you want to know your finger numbers, note names on the keys, basic note values, and time signature. If these sound unfamiliar to you, go back to lesson 2. We've got a lot to cover today, and let's get right to it. Being able to read music fluently is often a pretty big frustration for beginners and intermediate pianists. There are many different views on how important reading music is or not. But in my opinion, being able to read well opens up so many possibilities to play whatever kind of music you want. I also believe that reading sheet music should be taught from the very beginning. But I do find music teachers hammering note reading to students in their heads at the expense of making music. The goal of this is to give a balance of music reading theory technique and performance. If you're struggling to read music and getting to the point of where it feels easy, know that you're not alone. There's nothing wrong with you. You can do it, but with consistent effort. Let's talk about the grand staff. To put it simply, it's a combination of two sections, the top section and the low section. The top section is mostly where our right hand or higher notes are, while the bottom section is where our left hand and lower notes are. Each staff has 5 lines and 4 spaces. Notes on the lines and spaces represent different pitches. Looking at the entire staff, we have a brace at the beginning that connects the top and bottom sections, which makes the whole staff one unit. That means if they're one unit, you play them together. To be able to read a sheet music, we need a reference, and that's where the clefs are, to differ what piano keys each block blob on the page represents. And what I mean by black blob are the notes. For the higher notes, which is played by our right hand, is the treble clef, or sometimes known as G clef, because it shows us that the squiggly part here is surrounding the G line, or the G above the middle C. If I write 4 quarter notes on this line, on the G line, I would play G, from there it's relative. I have to think forward, so after G is A, B, and C. Like the alphabet. For the lower notes, it uses the bass clef, also known as the F clef, because the F clef points the bass F line in 2 places. Like if you look at the 2 dots, it's pointing in 2 places. And there's one important note that is easily recognizable that we haven't really talked about yet, and that is middle C. And this note, middle C, has its own special line known as the ledger line, and it's often written in both clefs. So you need to be able to recognize both the treble and bass clef. For my landmark notes, I'll use 3 and you'll memorize them. That is middle C for both treble and bass clef, treble G, and bass F. With these notes, you will be able to figure out the notes very easily and at some point make sense to you. The whole notes is alphabetic. So what comes after G? A. After F, G is the next note for the bass clef. If you have a note in the staff that you don't know, make sure you use your landmark note from below, like the one here that I'm pointing at in the third space of the staff. Find G, like use this treble G, and use the alphabet to know what note this is. Let's take a look at a simple piece of sheet music that you'll practice for this week, which incorporates the grand staff. It has 8 simple measures, but it doesn't mean it's easy to play, and as you can see, it's meant to be serene and calm. If you are a true beginner, most of these symbols are unfamiliar to you. So let's review it. So right over here we have the treble clef and the bass clef. And here is the time signature. And in this case, it's 4/4 time, meaning it has 4 beats in each measure. The MF right over here is a dynamic mark, and it tells us how loud or soft to play. In this case, MF means medium soft. Many other musical terms like this MF that we'll learn stands for Italian words, or most of them are Italian. Like P, for example, stands for piano, which means soft in Italian. M stands for mezzo, which translates as half. So MP literally means half soft. Or better way to think of it, medium soft. And F, as we see here, stands for forte, which means strong or loud. Towards the end of the music, we have a bar line with 2 dots, which is called a repeat sign. When we see this, we play from the top. So what I'm trying to say is, if by the time you reach the second last measure and see this repeat sign, you go back from the beginning and play it again. And after this measure, you don't have to play this, as you already played that, and you play at the last measure, which ends the piece. Now it's time to figure out the landmark notes and get them through, starting with the treble clef. Remember, we have treble G and middle C. Now let's check our bass clef landmark notes. which are bass F and middle C. Before we start practicing a piece, we want to know our hand position, or where our hands and fingers are supposed to begin on the piano. Your left hand starts on a landmark note, which is C, and you also see the number 1 below. So put your first finger, your left finger, first finger on middle C, and below that put your other finger in order. As for your right hand, it also begins on a landmark note, treble G, and you place your first finger on the G and all your other fingers above your first. It's better to practice one hand separately to get the feeling of it. So we'll do that. We know that our first note is middle C, and the next note is another middle C. But the next note is unfamiliar because it isn't a landmark note. So let's figure that out. We know that middle C is higher, and what we'll do is go down the alphabet, starting with C, then B, and then A. This will also apply to all the notes after A, as they're also not the landmark notes. As you can see, I've written the names, but just pretend you don't know them and always begin on the landmark note, which is C. As always, feel free to pause the video and practice all that at your own pace before moving on. Now let's practice your right hand. And we've already discussed that the landmark note is G. And a quarter note, which is 1 beat. Now let's figure out what comes after G. Like, what is this note? So after G is A, and then B, and C. Now here's the really nice thing of this right hand part. You notice that the right hand part is repetitive. Well, that is until the second last measure where the C note goes down to another note. And if you use the treble G as the landmark, we start from G, A, and B. So this note is B. So set the pulse and let's get to it. Keep practicing hands separately until it feels like you can do it easily, without much intense thought. Once you get to that point, then you can try putting both hands together very slowly. If you're a 100% complete beginner, this will be quite challenging for you, but I know you can do it with smart and consistent practice. It might take you a week or two to get these two hands together smoothly, but that's okay. You know that concert pianists practice a piece on and off his or her whole life. So, 2 weeks is nothing. And I want you to gradually work on this tempo. The last thing we need to do for today is your warm-up for the week. This warm-up is a very standard warm-up. You'll be on the C position on both hands. And you're just going to go up and down in this 5-finger position, note by note, making sure your hands are playing together at the exact same time, nice and cleanly. There is a tricky part to your warm-up. I want you to practice this on a metronome. The metronome is just a tool. It's not some magical thing that will instantly fix all your rhythm problem or make you a great pianist. But it will help you. You can buy one at a music store, or you can use an app, or even in the piano. If you have a digital grand piano that has everything, you can use the metronome from there. So the function of all the metronome are simply to click a steady pulse, and its measurement is called BPM, or beats per minute. If it's 60, there will be 60 clicks every minute. In music, metronome markings uses note values to set the tempo. For example, if you have a quarter note and it equals to 60, that means I'll set my metronome to 60 and every click is 1/4 note. Now let's do it faster this time on 80. And why don't we do it on 100? Practicing with the metronome can help keep your pulse nice and steady, and it can also help you gradually increase the tempo for things like this warm-up. For a week, see how quickly you can play with the metronome, making sure you're not losing control. That's it for this lesson. I hope you have a better understanding of the grand staff, landmark notes, and the metronome. Remember to practice regularly and use the metronome to help improve your timing. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Until then, see you all in the next lesson.